But enough about me. Tell me about you and Davrin.
What? How?
Morrigan has eyes everywhere.
Of course she does.
If I'm honest, I've done a full playthrough months ago for the Veilguard, and I told myself I probably would not play again just due to the sheer devastation and heartbreak brought on by this game. But I was watching a 50-part series by another YouTuber with this game, and that kind of revitalized my interest. But for this video, I'd like for it to serve two functions. One, to serve as a light review of some things that the game does well, and maybe pointing out some things that could have been better, though the review will kind of just be sprinkled throughout, not the main point of the video. Two, this video will also discuss my rogue's backstory, connections with companions, and the world around him, while also providing analysis of multiple themes across the game and the companions themselves. My game starts with Rook, also known as Mahmud, a young man from Tevinter who, as a child, was found and adopted by the Merkar family. There are conversations on Reddit whether or not Legatus Sharon Merkar is Rook's father, but since the game doesn't specify, I've chosen to just leave his father unnamed for this playthrough. Mahmud is cherished by his parents and his 4 older sisters who doted on him while he was still living at home. And obviously, as a Soparati family, there was no real emphasis on genealogy and eugenics, so despite the initial tension in the home when Mahmud came out to his family as a trans man, his parents are more than happy and proud to have a son.
I didn't know why. I figured everyone felt like that, so I pushed it away and tried not to think about it. Until one day I finally realized what was wrong. I'd grown up being treated like a woman, and I hated that. Being a woman didn't make me happy. Being a man did.
And his elder sisters often brag about their precious younger brother. He eventually ends up making friends with some shadow dragons, and he ends up joining. Now, that is actually something that I wrote down as his family not being very happy with, just due to the danger, the possible threat that he is under being a shadow dragon. I also wrote down that Mahmud has a strong sense of justice, and that is one of the reasons why he joined the shadow dragons. It very much was in line with who he is as a person. When he was on that job guarding a visiting dignitary who was investigating a slavery ring in Nessus, he kind of just threw caution to the wind and decided to sneak the dignitary into Venatori-controlled areas, like it says in the already prescripted background for Shadow Dragon rooks. But, you know, while the mission was a success, and many were freed from slavery in part due to his quick thinking and actions, he also caught the attention of the Venatori. That happening set the Shadow Dragons on high alert, and they were concerned for Rook and didn't want the heat either, so he ended up being sent off on a year-long investigation to hunt down Solus with Varric.
If they won't listen to you, they can always listen to Bianca.
Mahmud ended up seeing him as sort of an uncle figure, maybe even an older brother. I could dedicate a whole video to Varric. I won't be doing that in this video, but through him, Rook was able to make tons of connections throughout the year and see a lot outside of Tevinter and Manrathus. Now, at this point, I just want to point out some obvious and not so obvious background points about my Rook. So here goes. Family is very important to him. He has a strong sense of justice, and so people like the Venatori and people in power who abuse it really just piss him off.
Are you kidding me?
I assure you, I am deadly serious.
I don't have time to sit here and stroke your ego.
He is sometimes very reckless, as I mentioned previously.
Can't say I didn't try.
He takes serious things seriously, but also likes to take jabs and joke around with people he cares about. But he does tend to aggravate his ops that he's up against, just because of his sense of humor, and sometimes he likes to poke fun at the antagonists. Rook is in his early 20s, I want to say closer to 23. He's romantic at heart and has broken a few hearts himself, being the absolute flirt that he is.
All in good time. I never spooked the quarry. Not when I'm so close.
Bro!
Still need to snare me.
Yo!
I'm a very good hunter.
Oh, I'm seeing that.
But it's not out of malice, only that his work as a shadow dragon and running around Thedas with Varric later on didn't really leave time for settling down, though I do want him to fall in love in this gameplay. So there is one thing to do with the writing that I'd like to mention. First, I need to preface, one thing I am very happy with in Veilguard, which has been consistent in Dragon Age series, is the ability to create your own character and have a background that fits seamlessly into the world of Thedas. That being said, there are points in the game while playing as a shadow dragon where your specialized option for your background, as someone who is a local of Minrathous, kind of come off as insincere. Like, when you're talking to Alec with Nev about a case, and Rook's spoken response is something like,
We're local. We know that's a lie. Just give me a catch I can live with.
it comes off as Rook having an imposter syndrome about their heritage and place as a Teventer, or feels like the line is being spoken by somebody who isn't from there, but wants you to think they are for some reason. Anyway, in this next section, I'd like to go over the companions. Like I stated earlier, some of their backstory and character arcs, just to give them their own spotlights and also their connections to Rook as a character in this playthrough.
You're safe now. Get inside and bar the door as quick as you can, okay?
Thank you, miss.
One of the first characters you meet in the game is Lace Harding, a Dwarven scout who worked alongside Varric in the Inquisition. Harding's appearance in Veilguard has really opened a lot of fans' eyes to who she is as a fleshed out character. She's someone that saw Southern Thedas and her home being attacked by Darkspawn and the Blight and gave insight to the Inquisition, only to later say, you know what? You want the best scout? That's me, and being given the job due to her hard work and scouting abilities. There's something that I haven't seen many people talk about for this game, and it's that Harding's role in Veilguard is less of a scout and more of someone who just has connections. It does, however, allow more room for her character building outside of being a scout, which feels nice. But it also feels like a part of her skill sets as a part of her character design just kind of fell off. I mean, to be fair, we know who she is as a scout. We get parts of that information in the Inquisition and also parts of that information through points in Veilguard. But that's not the whole of who she is.
Hey, what's shaping?
No one says what's shaping anymore.
Something I really like that BioWare did with Harding in the Veilguard was that they delved deeper into her role in the Inquisition just for a moment, but if you talk to Harding throughout the game, you eventually have a conversation where she tells you that despite the fact that she was a valuable part of the organization, she was never a part of the Inquisitor's inner circle. And she doesn't miss the organization, she misses the people that she got to work with. And if you've ever worked in a job that you couldn't stand or didn't like, but you got to work with chill people, then it's probably relatable to you as it is to me. Harding comes off as a simple character with simple wants and needs. She loves her ma and family, and they send each other letters. She likes to cook and comes up with recipes that others seem to genuinely enjoy. Like Harding's someone who likes plants, trying new foods, reading novels. She's someone who, despite the state of the world, finds time to just be cozy and enjoy the little things, which leads to my next point. Early in the story, after stopping the ritual, she goes with the team to find the Lyrian dagger in Arlington Forest that Solus dropped and is imbued with stone-centered magic and the ability to dream, which becomes the center focuses of her character arc. Harding is someone who, as a Dwarven child in Ferelden, found it easier just to be amenable to those around her to have a better, maybe even easier time growing up. She's a people pleaser.
It's... delicious.
Really selling it, Harding.
Hey!
And if you're someone that chooses to obtain all of the wolf statues, or, some call them Solus's regret cutscenes, you get to see Harding struggle with her feelings about, the revelations, what actually happened with the Titans and her people, and how, again, she tries, despite her obvious anger, to push these feelings down, which leads to an eventual rot in the stone and manifests as a wrathful mimic of Harding herself. In my playthrough, Rook sees not just Nev as an older sister figure because she's in the Shadow Dragon, but also Harding. She's looked after him and they share a cute sibling bond where he annoys her with some of the stuff that he says, and his younger brother's sibling energy.
You know you're being creepy, right? Why are you watching me?
Because you haven't been sleeping and I wanted to figure out why.
But they share a genuine connection and they have each other's backs 10 toes down. So when that cavern is crumbling down around them and she's forced to face her inner demons and feelings that she's been pushing down, Rook and Tosh fight their hardest to reach her, eventually holding her and letting her know that it's going to be okay, letting her work through these feelings despite the dangers. I played through Inquisition, and originally I thought Harding was just a sweet, quaint character who could handle her own and not much else about her. So when I started playing Veilguard, I didn't know she'd end up being one of my favorite people in the game. But not just that, she speaks to the experience of displaced ethnic groups who have fought to keep their history alive despite others who would have that truth of their own actions be erased to ease their own guilt. But Harding herself is a character who, upon first inspection, you would never think would have this kind of a story arc, this kind of pain and, anger bottled up inside. But it's nice to see that BioWare really did give her her own story. And I'm very happy with the way they handled, everything. I couldn't have asked for more.
I'm ready to go. I have everything I need. This is the eternal hymn. The prayer and the proclamation. Isa Tunal.
Very Harding. Not the worst timing.
Nev.
Nev is a hard-boiled PI with a secret heart of gold who loves her city and will do anything to protect the people in it. I knew as soon as I met her in the game that she was based off of those old vintage noir detective films, and I adore her. When Varric's leads take the team to Minrathous, he enlists the help of Nev Gallus to narrow down the search to find Solus. She, much like Rook, has a strong sense of justice, but unlike him, Nev is no nonsense. Even in one of her first lines of the game, you get an idea for who she is as a person when Varric reaffirms that they're hunting an elven god and Nev replies, well, whatever he is, he's causing trouble in my city.
Well, whatever he is, he's causing trouble in my city. Let's go.
In my game, I chose to bring Nev to knock over the statues at the ritual site, and she got pretty banged up. I felt terrible seeing her like that, but I also felt like this fit in well with who she is as a character, rushing into danger despite what it might cost if she knows it'll protect other people. She has her walls up at first and comes off as someone who wants to punch up, but doesn't want the recognition and adoration that comes with it. She doesn't want to be a Batman. As I mentioned, she's a bit guarded, but as the game goes on, you see how she interacts with her other companions like Balara, Tosh, and even Asan, where she wants to keep up the appearance of being someone who keeps her distance, but she can't help but show genuine care for those she cares about. Our detective story arc revolves around her taking different leads and chasing down demons and the Venatori through Minrathous to uncover the truth behind their activities, which starts with a lead about a mysterious artifact being smuggled by a rich kid with a get-out-of-free-jail card from his rich daddy.
I know you. You're part of the Thread Crime Syndicate. Smuggling, sure. But Red Lyrium. Working with Venatori. It's not your style.
Here they are. My son is no cultist. He was completely misled. I appreciate your help, Knight Commander.
And a member of the Threads who we later find out is being mind-controlled by a dangerous blood mage and Venatori agent. So that dangerous blood mage that I mentioned, her name is Alia, and apparently Nev and her have been going at it for a while, and then Alia disappeared. So Nev's had definite run-ins with her before and feels a lot of guilt around having lost good people the last time that they crossed paths. Part of me wants to say that Nev and Alia are literary foils, but I'm not sure I would call them that. It's obvious they both love their city, only Alia's love is twisted and centers around power, which in a way is in line with many of the Venatori, given that their cult has shown that their actions are solely driven by the ideas of racial supremacy. As I mentioned earlier when talking about Harding, Mahmoud sees Nev as an older sister of sorts. And Nev has a lot of trust in Rook because as a member of the Shadow Dragons, he also showed his love for the city by choosing to rush there to fend off the dragon when it counted. And while Nev does trust Rook as far as his fighting capabilities and as a leader of their team, she does worry about bringing him along to fight Alia.
Rana's partner, Brahm. Where did it leave him? Where does it leave you?
Side by side with Nev Gallus. Like you are, for me.
You know you're a sap, right?
She sees that as her mission, and she doesn't want to get other people roped into it because, as I mentioned before, she does care about her team, she does care about other people, and she feels like she has to take everything on her own. Nev's a great character and was well written. Playing through her story arc felt really immersive and like I was watching one of those 10-episode detective stories on Netflix. You know the ones. I love seeing her go from being someone who just wants to take the weight of the world and all of the city and their problems on her shoulder for fear of getting other people hurt, even though it could cost her own life, to someone who learns to work with a team and rely on others. Also, apparently her home in Minrathous is much smaller than her apartment in the Fade. I'm so happy she really gets a new place to kind of do all of her work. And how cool is that to do all of your detective work out of like an office in the Fade?
When the job's done, the fish is on me.
You want me to bet on surviving this mess?
I want you to bet on a free fish dinner.
Tempting.
So, unfortunately, I was gone for another 2 months on holidays, and then I got sick again, and I was in the emergency room 2 times. But now I'm back to do some more work on this video. I can't believe it's taking me this long to do just one video, but I was having fun when I was working on it before, and I'd like to finish it up so I can finally upload it. Anyway, I'm back.
Gotcha! Oh, people! Where'd you come from?
Balara? Balara Luther?
Balara's story is a hard one. I think it's a hard one to stomach for a lot of people for a few reasons. If you're alive and you've gone through grief, and even if you haven't, you'll know it at some point, whether it be the passing of someone you care about, the loss of friendship, or a long romantic relationship. There are many reasons why we grieve as people. In Balara's case, she's mourning the loss of a family member, her younger brother, and the only family she has left in the world. She blames herself and feels that if she had been more attentive, more proactive, or just better overall, she could have prevented his death.
And he helped me too. He kept me focused, anchored. And now he's gone. Because I wasn't good enough.
It's not your fault. You have to know that.
Then why does it feel like it was?
As someone who's mourned many times in my life, and I'm still not even at the halfway mark, I have to say, I was concerned when the team found out that her brother Syrian was actually still alive, and it gave me pause. Well, it gave Balara pause too.
Are you okay?
We have to stop it. Get them down.
Boris Shiban? I can't believe it. It's really you. I'd hoped you might come, but I didn't let myself believe it.
Syrian.
I don't think this is poor writing. Don't get me wrong. There were obvious conflicting feelings that were being portrayed very well. This character's story arc just made me tired emotionally. You go from finding out Balara's brother is dead and having a gut-wrenching moment where she vents to you and tells you all of her feelings about her brother's presumed passing, only to moments later find out that he's alive and running around with Inaris. The emotional roller coaster, like I mentioned before, was just a lot. I ugly cried at the start after helping Balara check all of the artifacts for safety, and then again I cried at the end of Balara's story arc when Syrian died for real, and it was just a lot to put players through, but it was very well done.
Balara? One last favor to ask.
What is it?
Can you stay with me until it's light?
Yeah. Of course.
There's more to Balara, though, than her grief. She's a fleshed out character with an entire personality, and I'm glad that the devs didn't make Grief her entire personality. We needed to see her living prior to the events of the later portions of her character arc. We needed to see her living through it and after as well. I'm going to avoid talking about my rook too much in this section, specifically for Balara. All I want to say is I wanted my rook to be somebody that could be a safe place for Balara to vent and talk to, and be a source of shenanigans for her when she needed it. But most of all, I wanted Balara to have a true friend.
You just want to sit here quietly? That's fine. I can do quiet.
You're not very good at silence.
I'm great at most silences, just bad at awkward ones.
Fair enough.
Balara falls into the character trope of cute, quirky, nerdy. She's someone in pursuit of knowledge, from elven artifacts to learning new recipes or how different kinds of magic and mechanisms work. She fangirls over Nev a couple times to the point where you and Nev go find her multiple volumes of a series based on Nev's previous work. And she's just overall a very wonderful character to be around in the game. I've seen other people mention that she's just another Sarah, but that doesn't do her character justice and only serves to two-dimensionalize her. And I know that's not a word, but it also two-dimensionalizes Sarah as a character. Sarah is a character that sees the injustices in the world and decides to take a stand, but has a hard time facing certain truths about said world for fear of them obstructing or changing her view of the world and possibly herself. Balara is someone that seeks out understanding, wades through the truth to become a better person. P.S. I love Sarah, but this isn't about her. I'm really happy with how they did Balara in this game, and I couldn't have asked for more, just like many other characters that we meet.
She felt it all over. Her attraction to the hero, a powerful but properly contained tingle, nearly exquisite. Properly contained. No, sounds bad. Okay, cut the middle line, much more natural.
What are you working on? I'm guessing you're the reason we're here.
Who are you? Who sent you?
Also known as the Demon of Virantium, Lucanus' story starts with Rook following Nev's advice and meeting up with the Antivan Crows stationed in Treviso, only to find out that our mage killer that we're seeking was forcibly taken and imprisoned in an underwater torture prison. Upon finding Lucanus, we find out that while in prison, these creeps, the Venatori, forced the demon spite into him, and this non-consensual union automatically worries the team, as well as me. Gross. Ick. Obviously, we assist him and we take out the remaining ops.
The crows send their regards.
If you play through all of Lucanus' story arc in its entirety and pay close attention to the codex lying around Thedas, or spend your time researching in-game lore online instead, you'll find that the Demon of Virantium isn't just a broody hipster assassin from a nation based on real-world Italy.
Treviso, one of the finest cities in Antiva. Now,
Lucanus is deeply affected and traumatized by the events that transpired in the ossuary, but he's also a victim of abuse at the hands of his own grandmother, who, in her desire to ensure that Lucanus would become the best of the crows, did not spare him growing up. Halfway to, or the latter part of his story arc, we specifically find out that his more recent trauma happened with the borrowed knife of his own cousin Ilario and enacted by Zara Renata herself. When I was playing through Lucanus' story, I had an inkling and I wanted to go online and see if I was the only person. Obviously, it turned out that I wasn't. There are plenty of people that see Lucanus' story not just as a story of revenge and betrayal, not in that order, but also an allegory for survivors of assault. Obviously, there are people that see Lucanus' story and say it's nothing more than the story of betrayal and revenge, and that's fine too. But there are some people that shrug off the idea that his story is an allegory for assault simply because he is a man. Like all other characters, Lucanus isn't just his struggles, though. He's not just his trauma or his past. He's also a fleshed out character. I keep using that word. Why am I... Anyway, he's a character in the story of Veilguard that's very well fleshed out. His love language being acts of service is obvious in this first quest where you head back to Treviso, and before getting a coffee we hit up the market with him to look for gifts for some of our teammates. He's protective of his family and those he cares about. He even takes part in an ongoing book club in the lighthouse. Also, I feel like everyone was gaslighting this man after the first battle against Gillinean's archdemon. Like, what are we literally even talking about? He literally swiped her face, and the only reason she didn't beef it was because she flipped him with her tentacles.
Now, Lucanus! Finish her!
Lucanus had that, and everyone's like, oh, everyone makes mistakes, Lulu.
Mortal or immortal, doesn't matter if we can't get close enough. We had our shot at her, and we missed.
Say what you mean, Davrin. I missed.
Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. On another note, well, I want to talk about romance in Veilguard as it pertains to Lucanus really quick. Well, I would say romance in Veilguard generally lacked a little bit in comparison to previous titles in the franchise. No one was affected by this change more than Lucanus. I romanced him in my last playthrough, but my rook was a crow, and I chose to save Treviso, and I'd already decided he was going to be my first romance of the game. What little interactions I had with him gave me butterflies.
Bitter and sweet. You called that blend. Like a kiss goodbye. So, what would a first kiss be?
Honey and lavender cream. Sweet. Intriguing.
That almost kiss when you're in the pantry together. Oh my God. I was blushing so hard, but this time around I chose to save Minrathus. I'm not sure if you can still romance Lucanus after that decision, but I had already lost his trust and didn't want to pursue him. It didn't feel right, and in real life, if a situation like that happened, I feel like it would affect a romantic relationship, and Lucanus would carry that betrayal in his heart and ultimately end up with resentment. I think that would be normal. I will say, since I didn't romance him this time around, I did get to see a cute romance bloom between him and Nev. It was adorable, but I'm happy to see Lucanus find his safe place in Nev.
But you do make it better.
Well, don't use your charm all at once.
I have more than that. I hope.
The only thing that I missed about not romancing Lucanus was that you don't get to see him make amends with Spite and gain full closure on the situation. You don't get to see that healing moment, but that makes sense because it's really intimate and it is really a sensitive topic. So, just having somebody that's a friend that chose to save their own home city versus your own in this wildly like violent attack of an archdemon, that makes sense too. I was going to talk about my rook in regards to his relationship with Lucanus, but I didn't really pursue too much of a friendship with him in this playthrough, just because, again, there was that guilt sitting over me about having to choose to save Minrathous versus Treviso. One thing I would like to mention is that even in the end of Lucanus' story arc, he doesn't get true freedom. After all of the abuse that he suffered throughout the years prior to the game, and even, the shock to the system of realizing certain things during the gameplay, he ends up having to become First Talon, which is something that he really didn't want. Again, I love Lucanus. I'm glad that his story worked out. He did get his healing moment if you romanced him, but I think I'm gonna leave it there for him.
But I don't have a lot to lose. What there is, Ilario, Katerina, Nev, this team. I'm not giving that up.
Easy, boy.
Davrin and Hassan are hilarious and an adorable duo, and their dynamic is just so wholesome. It gets even more wholesome as you progress through Davrin's questline. Upon meeting them, you're meant to understand that Davrin didn't sign up for raising a griffin, but he makes a great griffin dad, constantly worrying about Hassan, chastising him to keep him from hypothetical future dangers, and being someone who pays great attention to Hassan's unique personality. Davrin is our Grey Warden companion in this team, and outside of being a Griffin dad, he's someone who's assertive and determined while not being overly domineering, though sometimes he can be a little bit stubborn like other members of the team. I'm looking at Lucanus and Tosh. Davrin's story centers around him trying to track down and save the Griffin litter, Hassan's family, from the Gloomhowler. Outside of doing some Nancy Drew sleuthing to find out where the Griffins are being held and trying to uncover the truth behind the Gloomhowler's true identity as Isaiah and the shady past of the Wardens, you're mainly running around Arlington Forest with Davrin and Hassan for some cute, wholesome moments.
Did Hassan just bring it some food?
He did. I'll be damned.
One thing I was kind of conflicted over is the aftermath of Weishaupt specifically. While most of Davrin's story is lighthearted and a good change of pace for the game, it seems like he was really affected by the events that transpired at the Warden's base, and that he might actually be struggling with survivor's guilt.
That's Renaud. Malmont. Anya. We used to argue. Who'd be the one to take an archdemon down? Who'd die so that others could live? Not sure any of us believed it'd actually happen.
When the moment came, you did the
Only
Warden's
to
proud.
last through a few ambient dialogues and cutscenes. I'm not sure if the events of Veilguard span over months or years, but Davrin went into the mission knowing he may die, but instead saw many of his fellow warriors fall, and that should do something to a person long term. Maybe it's more nuanced than that. Perhaps he's so busy with trying to get justice for those who've fallen and raising Hassan that he had to move on quick. But again, his story is for the most part and very wholesome. And why do I keep saying the same words over and over again? Outside of finding out the truth behind the Wardens and what they did to the original Griffins.
By releasing him.
We know who you are, Isaiah.
We end up finding out that Isaiah was previously an elf and part of the wardens who used to take care of the griffins. And unfortunately, the order forced her or commanded her to blight the griffins to fight harder against the darkspawn. And it was pretty messed up. It was pretty messed up that they forced her to do that, somebody that loved and cared for the griffins. And it's also really terrible that they did that to the griffins themselves, who were loyal. And, you know, animals tend to, if they love and care about you, or they bond with you, they tend to just love you unconditionally. So to do that to somebody like the griffins just is terrible. In this storyline, in this role play rather, I chose to have my rook release the griffins back into nature rather than having them come back into the fold of the wardens. And I do understand that the wardens now are different people than they were back then, but given the chance, I do think that if the situation were dire enough, despite the fact that I like some of the wardens that we've met, I do think there is that opportunity for it to happen again, and my rook and Davrin don't want that to happen, especially now that they've seen that there is another side to the story, there is another side to griffins, and they're cute. They're cute little dog, bird, cats, and I think they deserve better. I think they deserve to kind of have more freedom. Also, I chose to romance Davrin this time around, and I can say that I'm not disappointed at all.
I wouldn't want to be with anyone else.
Does this mean you decided to take the bait?
I've got some ideas about that. And,
You were saying?
We had the same idea.
It was the soulful eyes for me, and the voice, it does something to me. So I had to do that. No regrets at all. But I have chosen not to finish this game yet because I know that there is a point where I'll have to choose between letting Harding or Davrin and Asandai, and I'm just not ready to make that decision yet. I know I have to make the choice, but anyway, Davrin and Asan, awesome duo. I love them. They're cute. They're sweet. And yeah.
They're your family. I understand if you want to go with them. It's up to you. Bye, boy. Welcome home.
Hey.
Tosh is by far one of my favorite characters in the game and speaks to the experience of many queer people across the LGBTQ community, as well as children of mixed heritage and immigrants. They initially lived with their mother on the Ravani coast in a small stone cottage. Shaitan herself found out from a young age that Tosh could breathe fire, and unfortunately this was a scary prospect as they lived in Parvalin originally. Shaitan was afraid that Tosh would be dragged off to become some mindless killing machine, and so she stole away in the night, bringing her child and nothing more than them and the clothes on her back. It's obvious that she wanted to give Tosh a better life than one they would have had under the Qun. Upon first meeting Tosh, they go by she, her pronouns and seem fairly closed off emotionally, not getting on well with their mother or showing much enthusiasm for anything outside of that brief moment where they show genuine concern for and interest in dragons. Shathan, without informing Tosh, enlists them to join us in our mission to save the world, which doesn't go well initially.
Do you not wish to stop these blighted dragons?
Of course I do. I might have decided to join on my own. Maybe after you talked to me.
I talked to you about not using your fire in front of the Antam.
They're obviously someone who's struggling to understand, accept, and arrive at the fully realized and authentic version of themselves, and they blame their mother for this. In one conversation between Nev and Tosh, Tosh questions Nev's personal brand of femininity and how she shows up in the world. This all leads to some self-deprecation and Nev and Rook opening space for Tosh to start talking about how they feel and who they are as a person, giving them room to explore ideas and figure out who they are. If your Rook is canonically trans, they'll share some overlapping feelings with Tosh, and they really appreciate that, giving them some newfound insight that you don't have to be who others want you to be. If your Rook isn't trans, Nev offers to set up a meeting with some of the members of the Shadow Dragons who are trans. As you make it through Tasha's story, you start to see them open up. They talk about how much they love Ravani culture and how they're learning to accept themselves through a scene that just, I'll admit, broke me and had me bawling my eyes out. But it was ultimately heartwarming. It was so good to see them finally say it out loud and proudly.
You are not blighted or ugly or wrong. If you feel like you are, it's only because there's something you need to face.
They're not men or women. And I like how it feels when I imagine myself that way. But
one of the hard parts for me in the game was after you make it through Act 1 and 2 of doing Tasha's quests, eventually Tasha invites Shathan to the lighthouse for an awkward and rocky dinner with Rook. It goes about as well as you could expect, where Tosh abruptly comes out and Shathan tries to use what little information she has on the topic to understand Tosh better. There are a few instances in this story that deserved more nuance, as someone whose coming out was very rocky and similar to Tasha's. I wanted to touch on a few things really quick. One, there is this moment during Tasha's coming out where Shathan does try to understand. And when Tosh gets defensive, their mother tries to rebuttal, letting them know she didn't mean any harm, and gets cut off by Tosh. The conversation is heated, but we never talk to Tosh about this really. We just get options that paint Shathan as someone who doesn't want to understand, when that's obviously not the case. Everyone's story is different, and I find a lot of times we build up this armor, we get defensive, we get ready to defend ourselves because we're told and shown that the world is not ready to accept people from the LGBTQIA+ community. Tosh spent a long time building up their walls and feeling like they couldn't be the child their mother wanted. It bred a lot of resentment and defensiveness, but they never truly understood how much their mother loved them and cared about them. These are topics that maybe the dev team didn't have time to expand on, or they were trying to play it safe, or maybe it wasn't in line with Tosh being written to be somewhat proud and immature as a person. Overall, I think BioWare did a good job with ensuring a realistic conflict with the lack of proper communication between family members. I do wish Tosh had been allowed to be a little bit more introspective as it pertains to their own actions and reactions. But back to the story, eventually you find out that this asshat, this absolute chop named Cutter from earlier in the game kidnaps Shaitan, and it all comes to a head when the main antagonist of Tasha's story reveals himself in a scene that can only be described first as infuriating and then gut-wrenchingly heartbreaking later.
You are wrong, Atashak. Chakra Toebra is not an order to struggle against what you are. It is a reminder that through struggle you find what you are. And you have never done so. Evatash has. They are stronger than you will ever be. Rook, you will keep them safe.
Chakra Toebra.
I took great satisfaction in getting rid of the quote-unquote Dragon King. Stupid name. Dragons wouldn't have kings. After all is said and done, we see Tosh struggling with loss and grief. This is also something I thought the team dealt with very well. Tosh comes off as very young and immature, and despite me having wanted to see more introspection and self-reflection from them, it's not really in line with their character, but we do see them, battle with thoughts of regret through great voice acting and voice lines in line with thoughts that everybody has when mourning loved ones. They could have, what you should have, what would have happened if type thoughts. But that's so much like Shaitan. Like I said before, Tasha's mother having fled with nothing more than them and the clothes on her back from Parvalin to give them a better life. And now, despite the pain, Tosh gets to be who they fully are. They even share an adorable relationship with Harding that they both deserve. There are many more talking points I'd like to make with regards to Tosh, but I have a bit further to go with this video, and I can't get over a certain limit with this PS5, so anyway, I love Tosh.
But Ravain will. We've got a lot of Kunari who don't follow the Qun. And we can get more.
From where?
From the Antam. They already broke away from the Qun. They respect strength. Maybe we can kill the bad ones and bring the rest in. Show them how to live outside the Qun. Like my mother did. I can do that for you. Tama.
Veilguard is one of our mage characters in our team in the story of Veilguard. He comes a bit later, just like Tosh, after the events of the attack on Treviso and Minrathous. And when we meet him, he is just giving major university professor vibes. I truly loved his intro because it was very theatrical, even down to Balara turning and gasping and going, oh, "Professor!" It's so good. There's just something about his entrance into the story that I adore. I even adore his banter with Hezenkos, because they kind of remind me of two styles of art teacher, and I loved my art teacher in high school, and she's like the best. Having had multiple art teachers growing up, you kind of see how they approach learning and the furthering of knowledge as it pertains to the study of art. And, it's really good watching Hezenkos and Emmerich go back and forth. My favorite line that Hezenkos says, despite that I'm supposed to be rooting for Emmerich, is "Spare me your sanctimonious bleating."
So she's an evil watcher? That's great.
Only if she's beyond hope.
Spare me your sanctimonious bleating.
But yeah, Emmerich Veilguard is sweet, kind, I hate that Google just like listens to you and thinks you're talking to it and decides, oh, it sounds like you're talking about Captain Faraday. No, I'm not. I'm talking about Emmerich Volkaren, who, by the way, is incredibly sweet, compassionate. He is very enthusiastic and passionate about the study of the dead, despite the fact that, admittedly, he says he's incredibly afraid of. He's incredibly afraid of dying. He's incredibly afraid of death. After all, he did lose his parents when he was very young, and I think he also says that attributes to it. But as you go through life, I think it's normal for humans to have a better understanding of the concept of death, no matter what your religion is or how you were raised. I think eventually we all come to a point where we start to realize that there is a sort of finality in that. But let's not get all like deep and philosophical and heavy. Anyway, in Emmerich's story, we're basically going with him hunting down Hezenclaws and trying to get her to stop her, I guess, plans to steal people's souls. Meanwhile, the Venatori are kind of helping her in the shadows, but we don't really fight Venatori when dealing with Hezenclaws. So that's cool. Not having to see another Venatori in my face is always a blessing. I know I said I didn't want to get into anything philosophical or too deep or heavy, but Emmerich Volkaren's story is that deep and heavy.
Listen to me. You're right. I've never overcome fear of that final dark. I miss having a friend that could.
Yes. Always the idealist.
He's scared of something that in the real world is very unavoidable. Death is frightening when you realize the heaviness of it and the finality of it. No matter what your religion or your background or culture is, there is a finality to something, this existence. And Emmerich does eventually end up telling you that he plans to become a lich. And entering lichdom is Emmerich's way of avoiding death. Not just avoiding death, but furthering his ability to study, furthering his ability to help humanity later on. And it all comes to a head at one point later in the story where the tree branches off. And you have to decide, do I want to save Manfred, who gave his sort of afterlife to save Emmerich and all of these people? Or do I have Emmerich become a lich and fulfill his dreams? And I really think it should have been a choice for Emmerich, kind of like in Lucanus's story where he got to choose what he did with his cousin. I feel like we shouldn't have had that choice for Emmerich. I feel like it should have been him that chose what he wanted to do. Anyway, in this playthrough, I had Emmerich choose to let Manfred rest, and he chose lichdom. And he had this weird coming out thing. Lucanus's face, I was gagging.
Just tell me you'll keep your skin on.
That's not how it...
I should take notes.
Look, why don't we just start from the beginning?
Are you satisfied? Yes, I have entered...
Because it was just too funny, but, it was really sad to have to make that choice. Again, I feel like Emmerich should have had to make that choice on his own as a character, and saying goodbye to Manfred was really hard. But I took into consideration that Manfred had a life before his second afterlife, whatever you want to call it. And I did want this time to just let Manfred rest, because last time I was like, no, I love Manfred. And again, in this game, it's fantasy, so the second playthrough, I wanted to give him that opportunity to reach for his dreams and his goals despite the heartbreak. I did want to talk about Emmerich more, but I'm reaching the end of, I'm reaching my limit for this on the PS5. So most of this was unscripted for the end of it, the Emmerich portion. But anyway, let me know if you like this or what I could have done better. Not that I think anybody will watch it. Bye.
Cheese. Everyone likes cheese.
No, I like cheese. Harding deserves better than something I like.
Trust me on this.